If you use video to share valuable information with your audience, the last thing you want is for your viewers to be distracted while watching your content. Getting attention is difficult enough as it is, and once you get that attention, you want to keep it. One way you can make your videos less distracting and more engaging is by improving your shot composition. Shot composition is the intentional work of deciding which elements are shown and how they are shown in the frame. Shot composition sounds a bit fancy, but I really like the term because it carries the idea of being intentional about shaping what your viewer sees or doesn't see while watching your video. Ahead, I'm going to share some common mistakes and how to fix them so you can compose a great shot. Common mistake number 1. Camera is too high or low. It might seem obvious that you shouldn't point your camera up at yourself from the floor or down at yourself from the ceiling, but even small changes in height can create subtle distractions that you want to avoid. If your camera is even just a bit too low, it can create the sensation for your viewer that you're talking down to them. If your camera is a bit too high, it can create the sensation that your viewer is looking down on you. Position your camera so that the lens is level with your eyes. We feel most at ease talking with others when we are eye to eye. In person, differences in height don't feel as dramatic or noticeable, but on video, the effect is amplified and much more distracting. So unless you're trying to give off middle school principal vibes, bring that camera to eye level. Common mistake number 2. You're not properly positioned in the frame. This mistake has to do with where you are in relation to your camera. We've established that you should try to position your lens at eye level, so hopefully this means you're not too high or low in your shot. But if you're too far away or too close or off center, it can make the viewer feel distracted or even worse, uncomfortable while watching you. The solution. Remember MIC, mid-chest up. Position yourself so that the bottom of your frame is at your mid-chest. This allows for hand gestures to be seen and also puts you at a comfortable distance from the camera. Inch above your head. Position yourself so the top of your frame appears to be about an inch or so above your head. This helps your viewer focus more on your mouth and face, and combined with the previous step, puts you right in the sweet spot of distance from the camera. Center. With few exceptions, centering yourself in the frame is going to be the most engaging position. Combining all three of these creates an experience that is closest to an in-person interaction, since we typically frame people in the same way when we're speaking with them face to face. Common mistake number 3. Background is too bland. If you're like most people, you probably don't film your videos in a fancy studio with an amazing set design. But just because you're filming in your office or whatever quiet room you could find in your house doesn't mean you can't have an interesting background. You don't want your background to take attention away from you, but if it's too bland or boring, it can make the subject of the video, you, seem out of place or overly stimulating. The solution: purposefully include background elements to give your shot some personality. This could mean positioning the camera to show a bookshelf or a poster wall or well-organized tools and equipment. It could also mean adding a lamp or two, a few colorful throw pillows, or a collection of your favorite stuffed animals. You could have fun with it too and purposefully include things that hint at unique hobbies or interests, or things that go along with your brand. Common mistake number 4. Background is too noisy. I know I just told you to spice up your background a bit, but you do want to be careful not to take it too far. Specifically, you want to avoid having too much mess, clutter, or movement in your shot. The solution: check your shot and take care of the following. Mess. This can be anything from dirty clothes or dishes to stained walls or floors. We know that virtually no one keeps their house perfectly tidy and clean all the time, but if you want viewers to focus on you, avoid showing any kind of mess that might steal their attention. Clutter. The difference between clutter and mess is intentionality. You may have intentionally put all of those extra cables and cords into that clear plastic bin on your shelf, but it can still be a distraction for the viewer. Try to organize the items that will appear in your shot and remove unnecessary items that might make your shot feel too cluttered. Movement. Some background movement is fine, like swaying trees through a window, but as soon as your adorable cat hops onto the frame and starts cleaning himself on the couch, you've lost my attention. Try to avoid including distracting movement in your shot. It could be kids playing in the background, a blinking light on an appliance, or street traffic. There are some exceptions, but in most cases, you want to limit any extra movement when possible. Common mistake number 5. Not enough contrast. When I talk about contrast in your shot composition, I'm thinking specifically about the contrast between you, the subject, and your background. When there's not enough contrast, it's easier for the viewer's eyes to wander around the frame and not lock onto you. Look at the following 3 opportunities for adding contrast. Light. You always want the subject of your shot to be properly lit, which means if you want to add contrast using light, you may need to remove some light from your background. You don't necessarily want it to be completely dark, but at least a bit darker than your foreground so there's a clear contrast between yourself and your background. Depending on what best matches your brand, you could also go the other direction and make your background brighter. Just be careful not to make it distractingly bright. Color. You'll want the subject to be the closest to true color tone, natural skin tones, which means you generally wouldn't have colored lights shining directly on you. With that established, color contrast can work in a few different ways. You can add color to your background by casting complementary LED lights on opposite sides of your shot. You can use the absence of color, like a grayscale background, as a contrast to the color of the subject. Avoid having a background that is close to or matches your skin tone or clothing. Depth. Your shot can lack depth if you're too close to your background or if everything appears to have the same focal length. You can remedy this by separating yourself further from your background and/or using a lower f-stop for more advanced cameras to make the background more blurry. The key to all of these techniques is to be intentional. Whenever you film, take time to look at your frame and make purposeful decisions based on your viewer's experience and what will help them be less distracted and more engaged. And those are my tips for getting a great shot composition and making your videos less distracting. If you'd like me to go deeper on any of the things I discussed in this video, leave me a comment and let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.